Okay, so in this one, we're going to make our messages actually work. But of course, they're not going to be called, they're not Django messages, so we cannot call them messages. It might confuse you in the code a little bit if we call it messages, so we're going to call it direct messages. So direct messages, of course, being between two users. So if we look at our middleware, we've already used messages before, and this is Django messages. This is a messaging framework for the site to send messages to somebody else, right? So this would be a good example. We can just double check to see exactly what I'm talking about. So if I log in and I try to do something that says the user's not logged in, that is a general message. It's almost like saying notification, but it's not a notification. It's just a general messaging framework that we are not going to be using for sending direct messages to someone. So there's a receiver, there's a sender, and there's a message, maybe even some subject or something like that too. Okay, so in order to do that, we have to create its own little separate app. So let's cancel out our terminal. Let's clear everything out with Command K, and we'll do Python manage.py start app, and we're going to call it direct messages. That's the name of the app I'm going to call it, just because it's going to be the easiest way to know that it's direct messages and not the Django messaging framework. So in our models, I'm going to do class direct message models.model. Okay, and of course, there's a few things right off the bat we would want. We want the message subject models.char field, and we'll do max length equaling to, we could say like 150. Then the body of the message models.char field, max length. We don't actually have to use a char field. We can use a text field here, but I'm going to use a char field, and I'm going to give it a max length of like, let's say 3,000. That's 3,000 characters. That should be plenty to use. So again, we could use just a text field here. The text field though might run into some errors, as you see here on Django for 1.5. There's some MySQL database errors possibly. So I'm just going to use a char field, and we will use Django forms to kind of change how it's going to look when it's actually rendered. So don't worry too much about that. Okay, so we have a subject and a body. What else do we kind of need for this? So let's kind of think through it. Of course, we need like a sender and someone and a receiver. So a sender and receiver. And let's actually define that. So sender being the person who's sending it. So we'll do models.foreign-key, and we want it to be user. I don't have user imported, so I can import it now. So we'll do from django.contrib.auth.models import user. Okay, so now we have our sender. So the user model is in there and everything's looking good. So now we need to, of course, bring in our receiver. So receiver equals models.foreign-key, and that's also going to be a user. Now, what we will see here is when we want to sync the database, there's going to be some errors. Like, well, we have two user things. So if you remember, like connecting foreign keys, so I'm just going to show you real quick how we would do that. So if we wanted to get the foreign key, let's say we had user object equaling a user.objects.get. We'll say user equals to, let's say jmitchell3, right? So that's getting that one username equaling to jmitchell3. It's going to get that one user, and that one user then can access these direct messages with that foreign key, right? So user object dot direct message set underscore set dot all. That in theory would actually access these, but it's not going to, and that's because it's going to run an error with these two because they're conflicting. The two users can't have be in there, so we have to add what's called a related name to that. And it's just a way to kind of separate out the foreign key so it's kind of understood a little bit easier. And we can call it like related name equals sent messages or sent direct messages. So now calling sent direct messages on there will actually show us that it's going to be who the user is, who they sent their direct messages, and what and all that, right? So that kind of makes sense. Null equals true, blank equals to true, and we want to do the exact same thing right below it. And they both will need a related name, so we can say received direct messages. I put plural on there. Okay, cool. So let's now we can add like time fields if we want, like when it was sent. We could also say like when it was read or if it was read, but I mean a lot of that stuff is going to be based on the time that it was actually looked at. So we can see that if somebody looks at it, then it's going to update that to being, hey, it's been read. If it was sent, it's going to update to when it was sent, and then if it was deleted or not, and maybe even replied to. Okay, cool. So now let's just go ahead and run those things. So sent equals models dot date time field, and we are going to do auto now add equals to true, and then auto now equals to false. So this actually is what we've been using a lot of, and if you think about this, this might not be the best choice, because if we do sent auto now add, that means as soon as this message has been quote unquote saved, or the instance of it, it's going to add auto now, and that might not mean that it's actually sent. It might mean that it's just in a draft or something like that. So we want to have both of those as being false. And then of course these also should be able to take null and blank, because if it's not being sent yet, then we don't want it to run an error, right? So now that we have that, we can also put another one called received or read. That's kind of up to you if you want it to be read or received. I'm going to use received. Of course, it's not the exact same thing, so maybe read is the best way. So read, so as in it was read or not, like somebody actually read through it, or opened it. So we could even say opened. But read is probably the default for a lot of messages or direct messages, right? So now we have a subject, we have a body, we have a sender and a receiver, and then we have our sent messages, and then our read messages, and then we could add if they deleted it or something like that. But we'll kind of worry about that stuff later. So for now, we'll do def Unicode, and we'll return self.subject. Just that way we have, it's just basically the subject of the message. It doesn't have to show too much more than that. So yeah. All right. Now that we have this stuff, we can start to kind of build our views for it, so we can actually see what this thing's going to start to look like. There is still more things that we would want to do with this, and how we will probably want to add a model manager too, to see how we can kind of get all the different subjects and senders and receivers. But for now, this is kind of a basic model that we have that is going to understand what's going on with any particular message. Now, sent and read, we don't actually have to have those. Sender and receiver is important. Body is important. Subject, we don't have to have that. We don't have to have that, and we don't have to have that. The main part is these two things. Now, everything else around that is just making it a little bit easier for the users to kind of understand things, and making it a little bit more user-friendly, right? So let's go ahead and save this, and then in our matchmaker settings, in the base settings, in our installed apps, in our local _ mini settings, not our base settings, and the installed apps, I'm going to add direct messages to it. We're going to save that. I'm going to look back in here. Let's just make sure that we have the right things, null and blank. Should we be able to send an empty body? That's another thing that would be up to you if you want to do that. It's entirely up to you if you want them to be able to send just an empty body and have a subject, and that's it. So I'm going to leave it like that. Cool. So let's go ahead and sync our database. We'll do python manage.py sync database. And it looks like it was synced fine. So now I'm going to convert it to south, python manage.py, convert to south, direct messages. Cool. So now it's created. We have direct messages and those things are ready to go. So let's run the server. I'm also going to make the admin stuff for our direct messages app. So new file, admin.py. And I'm actually going to steal from a different one's admin, just so it's a little bit faster. I just copied that top part. All right, so now from .models import direct message. So class direct message admin admin.model admin class meta model equals to direct message and admin.site.register, and it's going to be direct message and direct message admin. Okay, so we save that and we go back into Chrome and we're going to look at our admin here. It's going to make me logged in. Okay. And now that we have those messages, we see direct messages in here. So if we add one, subject equals to get ready for some coding for entrepreneurs, and I'm going to use that as the body too. Sender is going to be, let's say it's Peter Griffin to me, J Mitchell 3, and I can write the sent and I can also write the read. Let's just change it to I read it in the future. I don't know if that will ever happen, but yeah. And then we'll change it to, let's put it back to like the 7th or something. That's when it's sent. Okay, so now if we save that, we now have this message. So it's ready to kind of be viewed so we can kind of see the message. Let's just kind of practice seeing the messages and kind of see how we want to actually get the messages before we actually create the messages. Okay, so we will do that in the next